What are the 3 things that will revolutionize the education system? If you're like me, you look back at your education and you're like, so many things were done wrong. And I was just reading an article that said US student loan debt has now reached $1.2 trillion. That's just in the United States. And people always talking about the global trade deficit and all that. That's at like 800 million US. This is $1.2 trillion that people owe for all these loans. Some to private loans, some to government loans. By the way, I'm here in San Diego, enjoying, you can see the ocean out there a little bit. And I was just reading some articles. I was like, I gotta talk about this, because I can think of 3 things off the top of my head that had they happened to you and I when we were growing up, would have set our life on a completely different trajectory. Been so much easier to be successful financially and all that. So let me give you the 3. Number 1, there should be a refund policy for universities. Joseph Stiglitz won a Nobel Prize as an economist, and he wrote a book, and he basically says he thinks that the current US educational system, the higher university system, qualifies as a scam because you can't get your money back. You know, Walmart, they pioneered easy refunds. You don't even need a receipt. And people thought when they first started doing that, people were like, no, that's crazy. Everybody's gonna want their money back. But people are more fair than you think. So if universities were offering refunds to people who felt like, hey, I spent 4 years of my life and possibly $40,000 or more on my education, and I can't even get a job. And in fact, I have no practical skill. Now, some people would say, what about liberal arts education and so on? Look, that's great to get a liberal arts education, but you know a better way to get a liberal arts education? Know how to create an income for yourself and then travel the world. I mean, this is not the 1700s. So much of our education system is still tied to literally centuries-old methodologies. Now you want to learn about ancient Egyptian history? Go to Egypt. Now, in order for that to be practical for millions of people, people have to have jobs, because you can't travel if you don't have any money. So this refund policy would force universities to focus down on, at the end of 4 years and 40 grand spent, people feel like, yes, I'm now gonna get a return on my money. And they could have a refund policy with some fine print that says, you know, if you're able to get a job in the field that you majored in, then you can't qualify for the refund. That would eliminate people who try to cheat the system. But for people who go and they go to school and then they come out and they can't get a job and they're part of $1.2 trillion, that's $1,200 billion in debt. This is a major problem. Heads roll over $100 billion. We're talking now 10 times that, 12 times that. Number 2 thing that the education system, that would revolutionize the education system, would be if you would teach social and emotional IQ type lessons in elementary, junior, high school. Public speaking, sales, conflict, how to deal with those things. How to read people so that you could find business partners, who to marry, who to date. There's so much progress has been done in psychological profiling that could be taught. I wish I had learned that. I would have been interested in that stuff. In fact, students are more interested in cutting edge, learning cutting edge things than they are just in learning, you know, geography and social studies. Best way to learn geography? Travel the world. You want Americans to know the difference between Sweden and Switzerland? Have them not be in $1.2 trillion in debt so they have extra income to travel the world. That is what will change the world. So I am such a big believer that the problems are fixable. I have hope, and I think that you already see these things. You know, one of my businesses, one of my companies is an online education private company. It's not an accredited college. It's taking what accredited colleges haven't been able to do and offering those to people. So I've got a lot of experience in seeing how well this can work, and you gotta teach other stuff. You can't just teach geometry, isosceles, triangles. You can't just teach rote memory history, like, you know, Civil War starts this year, ends this year. You can't just do that. You can't just make people memorize what the capital of each state is. If you need to know the capital of Montana and you don't know it, it's not life-threatening. It's not career-ending. You can Google it. But if you don't have a practical skill, how to start a business, or if you're an employee, how to rise up in that business, if you don't have tangible skills in a career, you're not gonna make any money. And one of my family members went to school, spent like 50, 60 grand in debt, 4 years for a Spanish degree. And I said, why don't you just go live in Spain? You can actually get paid to learn Spanish, and you'll learn better Spanish. You'll learn it faster. You'll learn it and it'll be more fun. So if if the modern education system had an emphasis on practical skills all the way through, in addition to some abstract stuff, you're gonna need some math, you're gonna need a little bit of geometry and all that. Some of it's okay, but it's too much. So whenever I talk to this about people, everybody, 100% of adults go, man, I wish I came out of school with great social skills, public speaking skills, persuasion skills, sales skills, reading people skills. Which brings me to my third point. The third thing that would revolutionize the education system is if there was personalities, a series of personality tests, because different tests aren't 100% accurate and they test for different things. These tests would go, a battery of tests that students got from age 6 years old to 18 in the junior high and high school and elementary system. So you're talking, you got 12 years to administer these tests. You don't have to do them all in one day. Then you would take the results and adjust accordingly what you teach the kids and how. Two things, what you teach them and how. Some people from personality tests, like in the Hexaco test, which is the most scientific cutting edge test developed in 2000, it's a variation of the Big Five test, it's widely respected. There's correlations. People low in conscientiousness, high in conscientiousness, low in agreeableness, high in extroversion versus introversion, they do better and they're attracted to different fields. Social facilitation skills, practical manual labor skills, accounting, management of people, all that should be based on personalities. Going back to the refund system, the second you made universities have refunds, mark my words, they would start doing a battery of personality tests because they don't want to give money back, right? And so they would say, hey, Bob, you were wanting to get an Egyptian, medieval history major. Why don't you do that as a minor and I'll teach you something else, like why don't you learn how to open a restaurant or learn how to do sales or something. I mean, look, let's be practical about life. You're gonna have to know some down-to-earth skills to make it. Everybody does. They should be teaching real estate, investing, all these things should be taught. These are the kind of things that you're gonna need from the day you graduate high school until the day you die. And because these three things have not been implemented, you see massive problems in the world, whether it be economic growth issues, whether you see recession, even wars and crime at the root of this, the issues around the world in inner cities, all this stuff that you see in the news now. You know what fixes this? People who have a livable income don't commit much crime. Occasionally they do, and there's some white collar crime, but trust me, the majority of crime is desperate people. And sometimes you can't blame them. If you're hungry and you got to feed your family, and you have no options because the education system doesn't give you any options, people resort to all kinds of things that affect all of us, whether you're rich or poor. So this is a plan that will help the poor, middle class, the rich. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't differentiate by gender or sexuality or anything. This is the cutting edge way that education should be taught. And going back to the personality test, not only would you find out what people have natural affinities for using personality tests, but in addition, you would teach them differently. Not everybody learns the same way. It's a fact. Some people are audio learners, some are visual, some are kinesthetic. Peter Drucker talks about this in his book, Managing Oneself. You have to know how you learn. But if the education system is always sit at a desk, listen to a lecture, have a book, it's already failed the majority of people because the majority of people do not learn that way. And so by doing personality tests, you could separate out how people learn. And this wasn't possible 100 years ago. It's because you might be listening and go, Tai, that's not practical. Oh, it's practical now. We have computers. We could put man on the moon. We have GPSs. We have this iPhone here. Where is my iPhone? Scratch that. I don't know where my iPhone is. Oh, here it is. This phone right here is more powerful than a rocket ship was in the 1960s. You telling me with all the technology we can't use computers, we can't use iPads, we can't use tablets, we can't use live streaming to bring customized education? This is completely false and giving up too easy. And what happens is the education system has inertia, and it's just doing business with minor changes. There's been some improvement in the education system naturally as we've progressed, but it's not enough. It hasn't kept up with the pace of advancement in the world in other fields. Think how much better medicine is. Medicine is indistinguishable between what would have happened to you in the 1800s. In the 1800s, had you been injured, you might have had leeches put on you. You would have had doctors who didn't wash their hands. They didn't understand germ theory. I mean, it was prehistoric. Now, if you get a cut and you go into the hospital, we understand. It's completely different. Now, we take that to the education system. If you go back to a classroom in the 1800s versus today, almost indistinguishable. You got students sitting there listening to a teacher for not just 1, 2, 3 years, but decade or more. You got to keep up. You got to keep up. So, I thought I'll record that. Sounds like there's a crazy fire going on back here. If you go to tailopez.com, I've got some of the practical courses that I teach on starting businesses and all that stuff. And like I said, I practice what I preach. They involve personality tests, they involve practical skills, and they involve full refunds. And so, I don't want to be a hypocrite. And I think the future will be private education. I think that university is going to be too slow, and more people are going to go online to learn. And you already see that. The online education system grew from $50 billion in 2014 to double that, about 100 to 110 billion in 1 year. So good news, people catching the trend. So check out tailopez.com, look at some of the courses I have, or look at there's other providers of online education. What you didn't learn in school, you can come back and learn now. So you don't have to give up hope. Hope's there, opportunities are there. So leave a comment below. I read an article that said the 3 biggest regrets people have is who they marry, occupation they select, and the education they had. All 3 of those could be changed and improved by these 3 little points that I talked about. So leave a comment below. What's your opinion? Does the school system need to be improved on? Do you think it's fine? And if you think it should be changed, give me some specific things. I'd love to hear and learn from you as to what you think will make education better. My grandpa just died today. I was kind of contemplating it and reading Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time. And it was my step-grandpa, but he was pretty close to me. He was older. He was 98, I think. So it was somewhat expected. He lives in Ohio now, so I don't see him very often. But he is the grandpa in my story that I talk about. Sent me those books when I asked him if he'd help me out. And one of the books he talked about was Stephen Hawking. And on this day, as I'm thinking about, life and death, and this chapter 8, this is the fate and origin of the universe. And you could bring this down to like the fate and the origin of you and I as individuals in the universe. Hawking says, Einstein's general theory of relativity predicted that space-time began at the Big Bang singularity and would come to end either at the Big Crunch singularity or at a singularity inside a black hole of a local region. Now, that's all physicist talk, and when it bring it down to our lives, my grandpa's life, my life, your life, there's a lot of singularities, points of origin. My grandpa Charles, he was born in, I believe, 1915 or 1916, and no, actually 1917. Sorry, and that's an origin point. And you were born at some time in this thing we call space-time continuum. Time as we know it, calendar time. It's a clock running here. That's the time, we would say. But it's a point of singularity. Before it, there was nothing. And after it, there was something. Before you were born, there was no you. There was no Grandpa Charles. And by the way, I wasn't sure I was going to record a video on this. It's kind of a sensitive family thing, but I thought, why be afraid of the subject of dying and death? We live in a world where parents are afraid to talk to their kids about money and sex and conflict and all the real stuff. So that doesn't seem to work. Doesn't seem to make the world a better place. So singularity points in your life where you can look back and had that day not been, your life would be in a totally different direction. You met a certain person. You didn't meet a certain person. You said no to an opportunity. You said yes. And so life becomes that initial singularity when you're born. And of course, today is the day of singularity, that ending for Charles and his time here on Earth. And within those two beginning and origin and ending points, I have to think that there's also points of singularity in opportunities that we say yes or no to. You know, Charles was a very fascinating person because he was one of the most knowledgeable people that I ever met. My grandma married him. My grandpa died when I was 8. And my grandma got remarried to Charles when I was probably, I don't know, years later. But my grandma was about 75 and she got remarried. She found love again. It's kind of a cool story, right? You would think at 75, my grandma's a widow, that there was no option for an origin point of singularity and new love. But there was. There was an opportunity. Grandpa Charles began to send my grandmother love letters. His wife had died about a decade before, my grandma, and they had known each other for many, many years ago, 50 years before. And so they revived an old relationship. It's a very beautiful story. And he kind of wooed my grandma with these great poems. My grandma likes smart men, and he was smart and witty, and he wrote these poems, and my grandma was fascinated by this man who was writing her from, he lived in Minnesota, my grandma lived in San Diego, so these letters went back and forth. He came into my life, you know, I called him Charles. He didn't want to be called grandfather. He didn't want to be somebody, he wasn't my blood grandfather, but I saw him as a grandfather, and he, in addition to my grandma, it was also an origin point for me to be around such an intelligent man. He was a PhD in chemistry and probably the most knowledgeable person I've ever met. Had a 20,000 book library when he moved to San Diego. When he met my grandma, he lived in Bemidji, Minnesota. My grandma lived in San Diego. He wanted her to move to Minnesota. My grandma's a strong woman. She said, I'm moving from sunny San Diego to snowy Minnesota. If you want to marry me, you're going to move here. So my grandma was the boss in that conversation. He moved to San Diego. And my grandma, you know, so the relationship began, and I would spend a lot of time around my grandma growing up. And Charles began to introduce me to books and knowledge and the power of the mind and how much, I think all of us only live it. I think there's 12 levels of life, something like that. And most of us live at level 1, maybe level 2. But there's 10 times, you know, 10, 11 levels above our potential. And Charles intellectually lived at that high level, 20,000 books. He spoke about 10 languages, or at least could read and write 10 languages, things, hard languages, Finnish and, you know, Russian and Hebrew and all these different ones. And so my mind was expanded to like, wow, you can know a lot of stuff. People often ask me, Tai, you seem to have a good memory. And I'm like, no, I don't have it. Compared to Charles, law 33%, where I talk about my TEDx talk. Spend time around people who kind of embarrass you. He embarrassed my level. Even now, looking back, like, I'm like, wow, he was 70. He was a chess master. I play chess, but, you know, a chess master is very high level. Like, he was, I don't know his exact ranking, but 2,200 to 2,400 probably. When he was younger, he could play multiple chess experts. They could look at the board, he would turn his back to the board, and they could play him. And he'd beat them all by memorizing all their moves and countering. So
immense. If his brain, the metaphor, if it was a grown man's body, he would have been like Shaquille O'Neal, 7 foot body, 350-pound muscle guy. So there was a lesson for me there. It was an origin point, a point of singularity in my life that my grandma took that opportunity, acted upon it, took a risk to get remarried and find love again in her 70s. But that was a singularity point, not only for her life story and how her life evolved. And now, today, that part of her life has closed as he's died, although he still lives on in memories and thoughts and in the actions of those people that he affected, like me. You're watching. There's a little bit of a ripple effect, the butterfly effect, chaos theory. It doesn't always have to be chaotic. Sometimes the butterfly effect is beautiful, And so it's been an interesting day. When somebody's going to die, and so they're older, it's not as tragic as if, you see children dying. There was a shooting in Riverside, California, here, where some people just opened fire and killed all these people, and you had young people in there, and it's like all that opportunity snuffed out. But that's how the story of this universe goes, that these points of origin and these points of ending are not always in our control. Now, obviously, you and I know that, but do we really know it? Because it's one thing to know intellectually, it's another thing to feel it and therefore act upon it. So whenever days like this come, I want to honor the life and death of my grandfather, Charles. But I also want to honor it by living, that's what he believed, is that he wasn't a very religious person. He believed in religion, acted out in everyday life, simple religion, humility. And I admired that about him. No matter what religion you are, I think all religions believe it. Religion not acted out on a day-by-day basis is no religion after all. It's just a pipe dream in an imaginary world. So, as I honor him, I try to take the time as I think he would want me. He wasn't big into funerals and things like this. I don't think he cared about the elaborate processes of honoring his body, because he wanted to live on in memories and thoughts and in behaviors. And if he, is a chemist, left some mark on the world. He's a very smart guy. I think he graduated college at 16 years old. So he's done that. So Charles, I know that you can't hear this, but thank you for taking time to be involved in my life when I was young, to write me that letter back, to send me those books. Now those books and that story has been an origin point, not only a point of singularity and origin in my life, but now some people follow the stuff that I do, and you've passed on beyond the grave. You've outlived the grave. You've conquered death, maybe you could say. Not that anybody can completely conquer death, but you conquer death in memory, in spirit, and so yeah, it's been an emotion. It's funny because I'm not a very emotional person, but on a day-to-day basis in terms of sad and things like that. But I am sad. I didn't think I would be sad, but I am sad because sometimes you think, what could you have done different? I wish I had learned more from him. I wish I had, offered more back. I couldn't offer that much. I was a little kid, and even he had a stroke about 5 or 10 years ago and lost a lot of that intellectual power that he once had. But so I wish before he had the stroke, I was traveling the world and stuff like that. Didn't quite spend enough time with him. They always say at the end of your life, you look back and you go, man, I wish I'd spent more time with my loved ones. It's not always possible because we all have obligations. But, for those of you watching who have a grandma and grandpa that live far away, get on a plane, They ain't always going to be there. So, and hopefully that becomes a point of origin too. getting on that plane. A new experience, new opportunity to learn the wisdom of people who have been through a lot. My grandma's luckily still alive at 97, born in 1918. You know, my grandma lived through she's born in World War I. So was Charles. He told me memories of World War I veterans. When they were alive, there were still Civil War veterans alive. My grandma and grandpa remember. Kind of mind-blowing. And then they lived through the modern age, where computers and cars and the nuclear age, and through the Cold War, and they were survivors. And it's not that easy to survive in the world. You know, I mean, people that are like 19 years old, and they're like, wow, I've been through so much. I'm like, well, look at people who are older than you, alive and dead, and what they've gone through. Puts life in perspective. And I think as I read this brief history of time with Stephen Hawking and think about my grandfather, Charles, I also think about, you know, the struggle. The struggle, he was born in poverty in New York City. And how the ability to overcome this struggle is, number one, the most important skill any of us will possess. Without that, you're not alive to even contemplate anything. And it's a struggle physically, and it's a struggle financially, and it's a struggle mentally, and it's a struggle against adversaries, people who don't have your best interest at heart, and sometimes a struggle against your own family, who sometimes doesn't have your own best interest at heart. But you go and you survive if you understand opportunities. And I think that's what I think most. You know, life is the famous Robert Frost. You know, there's two paths. He was walking through the woods, and the road split, the trails split, and he took the path less trod on, where less people had walked. Maybe it's a harder path. And he said that's made all the difference in his life. So to take the higher ground when everybody else is playing, to sometimes sit back and think when everybody is at a dead-end job and hating their life, to go through the grind that will get you out of that situation into the next situation. What greater ability could anyone possess? This is the Stephen Hawking origin story of the beginning of the universe. Whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Christians, Muslims, many religions would believe in that point of singularity. You might not call it the Big Bang, you might call it the creation moment, but there's creation moments happening today. Many babies will be born today. New point of origin for them. Might not be a new origin for you and I, but today's a new day. Tomorrow will be a new day. It's up to you and I to seize the moment. Carpe diem. Do you suck the marrow out of life, as the great American poet said? These are all origin points. To recognize opportunities, to create opportunities, to learn from others, like I learned from Charles. I think he's one of the reasons that I'm into mentors. If you see my TEDx talk, one of the reasons I talk about the law of 33%. One of the reasons I read a book a day. It's not to show off. People think that. Even to go so far as sometimes it's why I have a Lamborghini. Because it motivates me to stay on a hard path. And it's hard for people to believe that, but that is the reason. It's easy to, I can go backwards. I don't have to have materialistic things. I've already done that experiment for a decade. I went 5 years with no toilet. Live with the Amish. Live on a farm with no electricity. I've done that, and it's a great life. And it brings a different set of rewards and a different set of challenges. And it has its different set of limitations and different opportunities. So now I'm in a different place. And there was a new origin in my life. And maybe one day that will close. Well, not one day, it will close. And this is the perspective that Stephen Hawking book says. At the end, there's the big crunch. You know, life was an expansion and you had opportunities and opportunities, but eventually the opportunities go away. All of us will get old. This is Mother Nature, or you could say God. And as Charles Barkley, the basketball player, says, Father Time waits for no man, no woman. There is something bigger than us operating, so you must have respect. And you must say, the time, there is a time, and there is a time for me to seize the moment, and there's a time for me to remember I better seize the moment even though the moment's not yet here. That's patiently waiting for the opportunity, and that's sometimes harder than seizing the moment. Because as Charlie Munger's grandfather told him, Charlie Munger listened to his grandfather. So it's a rare life that's bathed in opportunity all the way. Most people only get a few chances. So when you see an opportunity and you're sure, do it and don't do it small. Seize the moment when it's there, but realize it's not always there. And some of us, some of you, maybe you, will have an easier life than me or Charles. Your path through this universe, your points of singularity, origin, and ending will be easier, and some will be harder. And so it's really not a race against the other operators in the universe. It's although we must respect the other people, the other forces, it's mostly about ourselves. Life is basically a competition with yourself. When we don't like that we procrastinate, who are we competing against? Ourselves. When we don't like our bodies because they're out of shape, it's a competition with ourselves. When we don't like our job, it's not a competition with the boss of the job we don't like. It's a competition of why have we gotten ourselves into that place to start with, and why have we stayed there for too long. You know, when you receive criticism, it's not an indictment of you necessarily. Sometimes it is. Ted Danson, I had lunch with him, the actor, and he's good friends with the Clintons, Bill Clinton, and he said, Bill Clinton, whenever somebody criticizes him, he really thinks about what they say, whether it's rooted in fact or not. So it's a competition with himself to analyze the criticisms of others and be able to be at peace if they're falsely accusing him, or to be able to be a man of action and change if the criticism is justified. That's another competition. Everything in competition with ourselves. The world's aggressive. People are aggressive. The forces of Mother Nature are aggressive. The economic system, all economic systems. We've tried a lot of them. We've tried capitalism. We've tried communism. There's been socialism, fascism. There's all, and on every variety, there's been no money. The Native Americans, and you know, they exchanged shells at one point, and even before shells, there was there was nothing. You know, there was no capitalistic structure at all, but it was still a struggle. And so between the origin points, there's the struggle. And for some people, that's depressing. For other people, it's beautiful, because at the end of Charles' life, you look back and you go, well done, Charles. You know, you raised the family. You influenced people that weren't blood related, but you adopted them into your life. You lived a good life. You contributed through your career. You contributed intellectually, socially, personally. You contributed to the love life of my grandmother. And I don't think there's much more you can hope for. Maybe you hope for something after death. That's great. You can do that too. They're not if, and, or they can be. They don't have and situations. You could maybe there's life after death. I don't know. You might know. Often, many people in this world consider themselves an expert of what happens after death. I think it's hard to know, because you and I haven't lived it. But you may have some authority and knowledge that I don't have. That's good. I hope to learn from you. But I do know I try to control what I can control. And I try to control my recollections, my reflections, my emotions, and harness them. They are the great racehorse that races throughout our brains. Our thoughts are over analyzing situation, our paralysis by over-analysis, our fears of, oh man, Charles died, I'm mortal. Well, that's a double-edged sword. There's good to contemplating that, but there's also a paralysis that can happen. You must act as if you're alive, as if you're a blazing star. You will die. Any point that's fixed, like Stephen Hawking talks about, the origin of the universe, or the crunching singularity point, they're fixed. So you never fear fixed points, because you can do nothing about them. But you must fear the day-to-day variables that would keep you and I from getting to the end point and going, ooh, we did awesome stuff. Like Chief Tecumseh, one of my favorite poems. Like he was a Shawnee, I think was the name of the Indian tribes in the 1800s. And he said, so you live your life that the fear of death does not enter into your heart. I always thought that was profound. So live your life. He didn't say, so be fearful, so freak out. He said, so live. Charles lived. And to that, I honor him. And I hope one day I could do half as well as him. So live your life that the fear of death does not even enter into your mind, Chief Tecumseh said. He said, love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. I always thought that was a beautiful sentence. Love your life. Perfect your life. To love, but not love so much that you don't work on it. Some people I know love themselves so much that they forget the second part of the poem. Love your life, perfect your life. And then some people get those first two. They love their own life, they perfect their own life, but they forget the third part. Beautify all things in your life. That means beautify the lives of all people that you touch one way or another. Beautify their lives. And then he goes on to say, people often ask me, people say, Tai, how do I know the purpose of my life? Well, Chief Tecumseh, centuries ago, said, make your purpose of your life to be the service of your people. Now, this is a loaded word to me. Charles, you can't serve everybody. No man can serve two masters, as they say. But he had his world that he served. He was a chemist. He was a scientist. He was more of an intellectual. And so he stuck to his own. He honored other people outside of that, but that was his people. And I think each of us, we must find our tribe. Sometimes I get people that criticize me and the things that I do, and I go, okay. Maybe some of it's justified and some of it isn't. And those people that choose to do that, I say, well, what might be going on here, you're not my people and I'm not yours. We don't resonate with each other. You go find your tribe. Nothing wrong with tribes as long as the tribes aren't always at war with each other, but there's personality types that get along. There's styles of life. So he said, and make your life's purpose the service of your people. That means you must find them and you must serve. And so you must live some of your life selfishly. He said, love your life, perfect your own life, and beautify all things that you encounter, all things in your life. And he said, don't be, this is Chief Tecumseh again, and I have to think Charles knew this poem. He knew a lot of stuff. I once tried to stump him on a history question. He knew everything about history, immense memory, photographic memory. I said, Charles, are there things you don't know about history? I was like 13. He's like, oh yeah, lots of things I don't know. I was like, ooh, and I was like, let me see, pick a hard subject. Do you know anything about the French Foreign Legion? And he said, no, I don't know much about that. And then he went on to talk for 2 hours about the French Foreign Legion. I'll never forget that. He wasn't trying to show off. He just had an immense memory. And this Chief Tecumseh poem, I'm sure he encountered it. And the end of this poem says, and when it comes your time to die, do not be like those who weep and cry and ask for a little bit more time to live their life over again. Chief Tecumseh said, don't be like that. Many people are like that because they didn't live between the 2 points of singularity, the origin of their life and the end of their life. And so they go, I need more time, I need more time. But time isn't always there for us. And so he ends and he says, don't be like those people. He said, when it comes your time to cross over the great divide between this time we call planet Earth, human life, cross that great divide. He said, be like a hero. Sing like a hero going home. And so I'm sure Charles, nobody wants to die. I don't think it goes against our innate DNA. But Charles, I wasn't there. Unfortunately, he was in Ohio, far away with his blood relatives. But I believe that he went home like a hero. you know, he went somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe he went into the dirt, the dust. He was more of an atheist. He probably think he's gone. But of course, the basic laws of physics in the universe says all energy is neither created nor destroyed anymore. Meaning even if you're an atheist, he breaks down, you know, the protein breaks down into nitrogen, which breaks down into nitrates and nitrites that go into soil, and plants use those for fertilizer. And so all of us just go back to the dirt one way or another. And so our energy in that sense is recirculated throughout the universe. Or if you're religious, he's somewhere hopefully better. But I believe he sang his life song through his day-to-day living, and that he went like a hero going home. And I don't know what else you can want out of life, you know. You can want millions of dollars and billions of dollars, and I'm all for making money if you can do it, because it's fuel and freedom to do bigger things for yourself and for others. I'm all for that, but I'm never fooled by money. And he wasn't either. And he was financially a wise man. He was able to help my grandma out, help our family out at some level, which is thankful for that. But you know, it's singing your song is how you lived between the points. And so I'm recording this as a memory of my thoughts in the moment. I've chosen for various reasons. I haven't always done this to share my moments of my life with other people. I hope you get some value for this. More importantly, maybe one day other people who didn't know Charles or knew him only briefly can watch this and say, that was a great man. Great in his own way. Not perfect. But in his not being perfect, there is a sort of perfectness, because that's the perfect human life. Full of our bumps, bruises, flaws, idiosyncrasies. Things some people hate about us. Things some people love about us. But at the end of the day, Stephen Hawking was right. Now, I don't know if the physics, I'm sure, will change as science gets more powerful. But there was some kind of origin and will be some type of end for all of us. But we can live on through our accomplishments. We can live on through our humanity, the lessons that our life teaches. So, yeah, I don't know if I have an exact lesson in something like this. I don't have all the answers. It's more of a contemplation. It's more of thoughts of a person whose grandpa died. So, Charles, sorry that I wasn't there. But sad, but also thankful. I wish some of my younger brothers could have remembered you. You had a stroke when they were old enough to really remember you and weren't quite as sharp as you once were. But maybe I'll have them watch this video. My cousin Maya, some of you know, and Aaron and Ben and them that don't remember Charles. You're a good man to me. So, thank you.
You know the best way in life to deal with an insult? Hate, somebody writing you a nasty text, leaving a nasty comment. It's a little story that I heard about Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan was playing some pickup basketball game with this guy, and this guy was talking all kinds of crap, you know. And Jordan looked down at the guy and he said, "Whose shoes are you wearing?" And the guy looked down, he was wearing Michael Jordan's. He said, "I'm wearing some Jordans." And Jordan said, "You can't insult me when you're wearing my shoes." And the same way in life, people come on your YouTube channel or they come, you know, on your phone and take their time to write out a nasty thing, whatever it might be. We've all had it. Everybody's had it. Bullying, whatever, you know, whether it be cyberbullying or in-person bullying. Just remember, you already won, because nobody who's doing big things in life has any time, even if they hate somebody, to take the time to write a nasty comment. Right? It's like they can't, it's just like Michael Jordan's shoes. That guy was already in Jordan's pocket. He had already proven he wasn't doing bigger things than Michael Jordan because he was wearing Jordan shoes. And whenever I see people doing stuff, I'm going, What kind of low-level life are you living that you have to take the time? You actually have time in your schedule marked out where you go write something nasty. I automatically write them off. I already won. Because I know even if I hate somebody, I'm not going to take my precious time and give them the dignity of saying anything. I just move the fuck on. If I don't like you, you'll never hear from me again, man. I disappear like the damn wind. Because, once again, the acknowledgement. Now, there's exceptions when you got to say something, okay? But I'm talking about the general, quote-unquote, haters that there are out there in the life that you'll find. Critics. Not constructive criticism. Constructive criticism. Sorry, it's late. That I don't mind. But we all know what we're talking about. People who take time out of their life to insult you. Just move the hell on. You're already at the moral ground. You've already taken the higher ground. Remember what Jordan said. You know, P.T. Barnum was one of the founders of the modern circus. And he did all kinds of things at all times to keep people talking about him. Crazy stuff. There's this story. I forget how it goes. But basically, he pretended he was somebody else or something like that. So that he could get in the newspaper. And it didn't work out so well. He pretended he was he planted something in an article that wasn't true. And a mob formed and almost lynched him. Why did he do that? He said, well, whenever they're talking about you, you're winning. And that was his philosophy. I don't know if that's always true. I'm not sure that all PR is good PR. But in general, if people are taking the time out of their day to actually write about you, talk about you, gossip about you, you can take that moral higher ground and you can know you're probably winning in life. Because as the old saying goes, first stage is most people ignore you. This is the ultimate insult, to be fully ignored. You know, if you're fully ignored, to me, I'll tell you this, if I wake up and there's no comments negative on anything I've done, I'm like calling up my office. What are we doing wrong with marketing? I know that humans are neurotic. I know there's high levels of paranoia, neurosis, delusion, and just pure nastiness in humans. So if I'm not getting enough, I'm starting to think like P.T. Barnum. I'm starting to think like Michael Jordan. Wait a second. Have I disappeared? Am I not doing big enough things that I'm not challenging the status quo, that I'm not bringing about some fears and neurosis in people, that somehow what I'm doing is an indictment on them? Because that's what happens. The second you make a bold move, there's an indictment on all those people not making a bold move. As a second, Michael Jordan steps out there at a championship game, he has the chance to lose. He has a chance for people to go, oh, this Michael Jordan guy, blah, 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 or Kobe Bryant, or Messi, or Maradona, or Tom Brady. The second you put yourself out there on the line, of course, people can talk shit. And the reason is because they feel threatened. People look back, like Thoreau said, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What's called resignation is confirmed desperation, meaning most people, their best attempt at a meaningful life is some comment that they're going to leave you, some insult that they're going to do, because they can't conjure up enough energy, enough willpower, enough motivation to kill and quell the procrastination and move into something bigger, which is doing. At the end of the day, in the KSE formula I talk about, knowledge, strategy, execution. Execution is the final and completing step of life. So what do most people do? Adam Carolla calls this, moral satiation. The fact that they act and execute by trying to pull someone else down, that to them satiates this feeling, well, at least I'm trying to do something. No, they're not doing anything big. Don't worry about them. I promise you this. The biggest insult you can ever get is when people don't call you back. The biggest insult you ever get is meeting a high-level mentor and they don't call you back. No high-level mentor is going to reach out to you and leave a comment like, I really didn't enjoy meeting you. Hell no, they're on and off. They're off to bigger and badder things. That's the insult to watch out for. That's what P.T. Barnum was talking about. The insult to watch out for is silence, crickets. Don't worry about a little hate. Don't worry. And again, don't ignore constructive criticism. But at the end of the day, you want some noise around your life. You want some dust flying up. You want some activity. They don't make statues to critics, do they? Nah, they make statues to warriors. They make statues to people who change the world. They make statues to conquerors. They make statues to thinkers, to inventors, to people who say, I'm putting my neck out on the line, even though I know it makes me vulnerable. Who cares? Michael Jordan got a lot of hate in the beginning of his career because he couldn't win a championship. But then he won 6 in a row. Well, there's a little break when he retired, but he won 6 for 6. Now people call him the greatest of all time, but he had to be willing to endure that. And you see that in every athlete. You see that in you see Steve Jobs. Boy, he had so much hate. The whole board of Apple kicked him out of his own company. What did he do? Did he disappear? Did he freak out? Did he faint? Nope. He understood. There was hate there. There was jealousy of him. And there was an indictment of maybe they didn't have the brain power that he had. So they got rid of him. That's been going down since the beginning of time. Don't worry about it. It'll come. It'll go. You stay even. You stay cool under pressure. Don't get too high when everybody's praising you, and don't get too low when everybody's saying offensive things. You just keep doing your thing. Listen to the smart people that are giving you constructive feedback. Alter your path there. The people that are just out for hate, remember, you already won because they're taking their time to comment into your life. You're like the Michael Jordan scenario. Whose shoes you wearing? All right. So what's an example where you freaked out when somebody said something offensive in your life? It could be a text, it could be a phone call, it could be gossip, it could be online. Where have you not listened to the even keel approach? Where have you not been in control of your brain and understood what Michael Jordan and P.T. Barnum and Steve Jobs understood so well? Leave an example. All right. Give some feedback here in the community. I'd love to hear these, and talk to you soon. I'm headed to bed. Got a book waiting there. The Art of War, one of the oldest books, but the best books you can ever read. Life is like a little bit like war, you know. I'm just out having lunch with my friend from Norway. Say hello, Kat.
Hi, hvordan går det?
Hvordan går det? I have horrible Norwegian. It's a crazy language, but it's one of the best countries in the world. Good people. Anyway, so Art of War was literally written in the 500 BC era. And so I always say, a lot of people come to me and they want me to invest in their businesses and things, and I go, but tell me your strategy. And life isn't exactly like war. It's not always violent, but in terms of strategy, if you don't have a strategy, I can guarantee you how much money you're gonna have in your bank account. So people who strategize win, and it's that simple. Whether it's money or you know, charity or anything you're trying to do, show me your plan and I'll show you the percentage chance you have of pulling it off. So I like actually strategy better than plan. He who knows himself and also his enemy will never lose a battle. You matched the car, you know that?
I know.
Did you plan that?
I planned it.
I read that the average person, I read that 50% of people will quit after one mistake because they fear disgrace. 70% of people will quit after 2, and 90% of people quit after 3 mistakes. Don't be like that. You gotta go at least 4 or 5 times. What's the biggest mistake you ever made?
You don't want to know that.
I don't want to know. Were you sober?
Yes.
Best line in this book. She's a Gemini, she likes crazy ideas. Here's a good idea. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you don't need to fear the result of 100 battles. But, and this is most people, if you only know yourself but not your competition, for every victory gained, you'll also suffer defeat. That's why most people, like, especially in business, but in everyday life, they only know what they want to do, and they forget to factor in that other people have a counter move. And so, if you want to do big things, you have to know yourself and what the competitors are already doing. People are like, I want to be an entrepreneur, Ty, but I'm like, okay, who's already doing what you're doing? And people go, oh, I don't know that much. I'm like, you should know the shoe size of your closest competitor. He says, if you know yourself but not your enemy, for every battle you win, you lose one. So it's like 1 step forward, 1 step backwards. And that's why 80% of entrepreneurs go broke in 5 years. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you always lose.
You know, actually, one of the best other lines that I like in here, he says, the skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible. I see people losing a lot, you know, they're like starting business after business, or everything they do fails. You gotta make sure you put yourself in a position to win, which is basically don't bite off more than you can chew. I don't think there's anything wrong with ratcheting up your business real tight or whatever you're trying to do. You know, Dean Smith, one of the #1 basketball coaches of all time, UNC head coach, he said, he coached Michael Jordan. He said a lot of people, tour buzz, a lot of people say that you should have, you know, your vision and, I mean, your dream should be at the stars. That way if you only hit halfway, you hit to the moon or whatever. And he said, I never believed that. He said, hit goals that are attainable. So put yourself in positions to win. Study this book. It'll change your life, I'm telling you. It's a good book. You can read it in a short period of time. Look at that. Yeah, one more time for some bloopers. All right, give us a true, give us a Norwegian ballet dance move.
That was really good.
That was actually pretty good. And one of the big things it talks about is you have to know yourself. You know, take psychometric tests. They have them online. They're free. Myers-Briggs, DISC, Hexaco. They've got the Strength Finder one. They have Colby. These are all knowing yourself. Remember what he says, if you only know yourself but don't know the enemy, for every battle you win, for every success you have, you'll have a loss. So if you want to put yourself in a position to win, make sure you're continually studying not only yourself, but also you got to do your due diligence on on other competitors. Like I tell people, have you spent 8 hours searching everything about any competitor that's ever done anything similar? Maybe not identical, but similar. I was just reading a book by Paul Allen and how he and Bill Gates started Microsoft, and he said Bill Gates was he was obsessed with the competitor, and that's advice going back 500 years. So give us some, how do you say I like fast cars in Norwegian?
Jeg liker raske biler.
How do you say it?
Jeg liker raske biler.
That is a complicated sentence that I cannot say. So, uh-oh, we got a dog coming in. Anyway, so one thing I was just going to say, I'm going to start posting, if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to start putting out some short-term videos that I just pop up, okay? And I'm doing some contest stuff. Like I'm giving away like a car this year. I'm helping out entrepreneurs with tools, laptops, all this stuff, just because I believe in investing in others. So if you're interested, one thing you can just do, I'm gonna pop these up, so you gotta be on my subscriber list to see it. Whoever leaves the best comment on my video that I pop up is gonna win. So yeah, do me a favor, subscribe here, and Art of War, Lamborghini, Art of War, they go together.